Let me tell you something that nobody on the news will tell you. The 2026 recession isn't going to destroy your future. It's going to reveal it. It's going to separate permanently, brutally, and without apology the people who prepared from the people who were simply watching. Right now, at this very moment, a quiet wealth transfer is already happening. Not loud, not dramatic, no headlines announcing it, just a slow, invisible shift where money, assets, and opportunity move from the hands of the unprepared into the hands of the people who saw this coming. And here's the part that should shake you awake. This transfer doesn't happen during the recession. It happens right now, in the months before, in the quiet decisions made by ordinary people who chose to think differently when they still had time. I've been through 12 recessions, 12, and I'll tell you something that most people never want to hear. Every single time, I came out wealthier on the other side. Not because I was lucky, not because I had inside information, not because I was born into money or had some secret formula, but because I understood one thing early in my life that most people spend decades trying to figure out, if they figure it out at all. A recession isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens for you, if you're ready. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to have a complete, practical, step-by-step framework, not theory, not motivation, not fluff, that you can start using today to protect yourself, position yourself, and potentially profit from what's coming. And I'm going to start by showing you why most people are already losing before the recession even arrives.
Right now, most people are doing the same thing. They're watching the news, they're worrying about their job security, their rent, the interest rate on their credit card, the price of groceries. And while they're focused on all of that noise, while their attention is completely consumed by the headlines, the bigger picture is quietly shifting underneath them. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it because I've watched this exact pattern repeat itself my entire life. And the people who get hurt most in a recession aren't the ones who saw it coming and ignored it. They're the ones who were simply looking at the wrong things. In 2008, while the world was in full panic mode, while people were selling their stocks at the worst possible prices, while headlines screamed about the end of the financial system, I was busy. I deployed over $15 billion into the market during that crash, not despite the fear, because of it. When people ask how I stayed calm while everyone else was falling apart, my answer is always the same. I prepared before the storm. Let me tell you about two people I've observed over the years. Same background, same income, same starting point in life.
The first one, every time his salary went up, his life got bigger. Nicer car, better apartment, more dinners out, bigger vacations, designer clothes, the latest phone on launch day. From the outside, he looked successful. And honestly, he felt successful. He was living the life people on Instagram told him he was supposed to be living. The second person, every time her salary went up, she sat on her hands. Her lifestyle barely changed. She drove the same car, kept the same apartment, put the extra money somewhere quiet, and waited. For a while, nothing happened. Both were doing fine. Both looked like they had their lives together. Then, the economy softened. Hours got cut. Companies started tightening. Opportunities dried up. The first person panicked immediately. His expenses had grown to match and then exceed his old income. He had almost nothing saved. He started missing payments. He sold his car for less than he paid for it. He was underwater, and the water was rising fast. The second person, she was calm. She was looking at undervalued real estate, looking at good companies whose stock had gone on sale. She was in a position to act while everyone else was just trying to survive. Same income, same starting point, completely different outcome. I call this the liquidity trap, and I've seen it claim more people than almost anything else in my career. Here's what most people fundamentally misunderstand about building wealth. Lifestyle isn't wealth. Lifestyle is a cost.
The more your lifestyle expands, the more exposed you become when conditions change. And conditions always change. That's not pessimism. That's not doom scrolling. That's just history, playing out the way it always has. I've kept large amounts of cash ready throughout my entire career, not because I didn't know what to do with it, but because I was waiting for the moment when someone who was overextended needed to sell something valuable at a price that reflected their desperation, not the actual worth of the asset. That moment comes in every recession. Every single one. And here's the iron law I've built my wealth philosophy around. The investor with cash and patience will always outperform the investor with ideas and no options. Always. But here's what I want you to really absorb, because this goes deeper than most people realize. Liquidity isn't just a financial position. It's a psychological one. When you have a real cash cushion, something you can actually live on for 6 months, 9 months, a year, your thinking completely changes. You stop reacting. You start seeing. And clear thinking during a recession is worth more than any stock tip, any trend prediction, any hot take from a financial influencer. So ask yourself this question right now. Be honest. If your income stopped tomorrow, completely, no warning, how many months could you last? That number tells you exactly how much risk you're currently carrying. If the answer is less than 3 months, you're not investing. You're gambling with your survival. And the second principle is going to show you what's quietly making that number smaller every single month, even when you think you're doing fine.
Let me say something about debt that I think most people have never truly absorbed. Debt isn't a balance on a screen. It isn't a monthly payment you schedule and forget about. Debt is borrowed time from your future. Every dollar you owe has already been spent. It's gone. You just haven't done the work to pay for it yet. I've seen more people fail because of leverage than almost anything else in my life. And the reason isn't that they borrowed too much in one dramatic moment. It's that the cost of debt compounds quietly, invisibly, every single day in the background. And most people never stop to calculate what it's actually taking from them. Here's a simple example that should disturb you. You put $4,000 on a credit card at 22% interest, which is completely standard today, by the way, not some predatory edge case. You make minimum payments. By the time that balance is gone, you've paid back nearly double what you borrowed. But here's the part that most people miss entirely. That money wasn't just spent. It was stolen from your future. Every dollar going toward interest is a dollar that isn't compounding, a dollar that isn't building, a dollar that isn't working for you in the market, in real estate, in any asset that could be growing while you sleep. I've talked about compound interest my whole life as the greatest wealth builder ever discovered. But compound interest works just as powerfully in reverse. With debt, it compounds against you, quietly, relentlessly, every single day. And here's why this matters so much heading into the 2026 recession specifically. When the economy turns, and based on everything I'm watching right now, it is turning, income often drops. Maybe your job changes. Maybe your business slows. Maybe your hours get cut and nobody gives you advance warning. Your income gets smaller. But your debt doesn't get the memo. It keeps charging. Same rate, same schedule, no adjustment for your circumstances, no sympathy, no pause button. So people enter a recession already behind, already bleeding from a wound they couldn't see. And then their income falls on top of it. That's not a tough stretch. That's a spiral. I've watched it happen to smart, hardworking people who simply never thought carefully enough about this one thing. The people who come out of recessions ahead are almost always the ones who went in lean. Not because they earned more, but because they owed less. Less obligation, more freedom, more options. And what I found, after watching this play out across 12 separate downturns, is this. The less you owe, the more clearly you think. And the more clearly you think, the better you act. Which brings me to something that most people never recognize as a financial problem at all. Something quieter than debt.
something more personal. And in my experience, something far more powerful in keeping people trapped.
This one won't be in any financial textbook. But in my experience, having studied human behavior and the psychology of money for most of my adult life, it might be the most powerful invisible force keeping people from building real, lasting wealth. I call it the consumption identity. Here's what I mean. At some point, usually slowly, usually without noticing, people begin to define themselves by what they own. Their car says something about who they are. Their apartment says something. Their clothes, their phone, their vacations, their restaurants. These purchases stop being just purchases. They become identity. And once that happens, once spending becomes how you express who you are, cutting back stops feeling like financial wisdom. It starts feeling like loss, like becoming someone less. I've seen people earning very good money, genuinely strong incomes, who couldn't save a single dollar. Not because they couldn't afford to, but because every dollar was tied up in maintaining a version of themselves that required constant financial feeding. The raise got spent before it arrived. The bonus disappeared into a lifestyle upgrade. The gap between earning and keeping never closed. And it never closed because it couldn't, not without threatening the identity they had built around their spending. And here's what nobody ever tells them. None of that is weakness. That's design.
The consumer economy is extraordinarily good, sophisticated, scientific, relentless at connecting your sense of self-worth to your spending patterns. Advertising doesn't sell products, never has. What it sells is belonging. What it sells is identity. It says, buy this, and you'll be this kind of person. Drive this car, and people will respect you. Wear this, and you'll feel confident. Stay at this hotel, and you'll feel like you've made it. And it works. I understand this better than most people because I studied it intensely as a young man. I read every book I could find on human psychology, on behavior, on what actually drives the decisions people make, financial and otherwise. And here's what I've concluded after a lifetime of watching it up close. The wealthiest people I know don't identify with their possessions. They identify with their principles, their patience, their long-term thinking. I've lived in the same house since 1958. I paid $31,500 for it. I drive a modest car. I eat breakfast at McDonald's most mornings. Some people think that's eccentric for someone in my position. I think it's freedom. When your identity isn't tied to what you spend, when what you own has nothing to do with who you believe you are, nothing can take it from you. Not a recession, not a market crash, not a job loss, not a bad year. You stay yourself. You stay calm. You stay in the game. And staying in the game, being positioned, being present, being ready, is the entire difference between who harvests in a recession and who simply tries to survive one. Here's the question I want you to sit with before you move on. If you stripped away everything you own tomorrow, the car, the apartment, the things you buy to feel okay about yourself, would you still know who you are? Because the answer to that question tells you more about your financial future than any spreadsheet ever could.
Most personal finance advice is built around one idea: willpower. Spend less, save more, try harder, be more disciplined, make better choices. Just decide to be different. I understand the appeal of that message. It's empowering on the surface. It puts you in control. It feels like a solution. But I've never found willpower to be a reliable long-term strategy. Not for myself, not for anyone I've observed closely over decades. Willpower is a depleting resource. It runs out every single day. Under stress, under fatigue, under social pressure, under the slow grind of normal life. If your entire financial plan depends on constantly overriding your own impulses, that plan has a structural weakness built into it.
The people I've seen build real, lasting financial discipline over decades didn't do it through sheer force of will. They did it by designing their environment so the right behavior was simply the easiest behavior. I call this environment architecture, and it's one of the most underrated wealth building tools that exists. Here's what it looks like in practice. If every time you get paid, the money lands in your checking account and sits there, accessible and visible, you'll spend it. Maybe not all at once, maybe not in one dramatic decision, but gradually, naturally, without drama or intention, it'll go. Because accessible money gets spent. That's not a character flaw. That's human nature.
But if the day you get paid, a portion automatically moves to a savings account before you ever see it, before it ever feels like your money, something completely different happens. You adapt to what's left. Your spending adjusts downward without any painful decision-making. The savings builds without requiring willpower at all. The decision was made once, at the system level, and then it runs on its own, silently, whether you're thinking about it or not. That's the architecture. That's the structure that works while you sleep. Now, here's the part that most people overlook completely, and it might be the most important piece. Your social environment matters just as much as your financial systems. I've believed for a long time, and decades of observation have only reinforced this, that the people you spend the most time with shape your financial behavior more than almost any other single factor. Not because your friends are bad people, not because anyone is intentionally influencing you, but because humans are wired at a deep and ancient level to mirror the behavior of the people around them. We adjust to the norms of our group. It's natural. It's evolutionary. It kept our ancestors alive. If the 5 people you spend the most time with spend everything they earn, if that's just what people like you do, you'll find reasons to do the same. It'll feel normal, comfortable, even virtuous. But if the people around you think about the future, if they talk about building, if they take a long view, if they make decisions based on where they want to be in 10 years, rather than how they want to feel this weekend, you'll naturally move in that direction. I was fortunate to have mentors early on, people who showed me what disciplined, patient, long-term thinking actually looked like from the inside. Not in theory, not in books, in the way they made real decisions with real money under real pressure. That changed everything about how I operated. So if I were in your position today, I'd think carefully about both kinds of environment. The financial environment, savings automation, debt reduction systems, automatic investment contributions, friction removed from good decisions and added to bad ones. And the human environment, the voices you listen to, the communities you're part of, the people you spend your time with, the content you consume. Both of those are shaping your outcomes right now, whether you design them or not. And the final principle ties everything together, because even with perfect systems and the right people around you, there's one more force quietly working against you. It's the most invisible of all. And in 2026, it's louder and more dangerous than it's ever been in my lifetime.
I want to describe something I think of as the attention economy tax. Here's how it works. Every platform competing for your time, every news channel, every social media feed, every financial app on your phone, they all have one thing in common. They profit from your attention. Not from your well-being, not from your financial health, not from your success, from your attention. And the fastest, most reliable, most scientifically proven way to capture and hold human attention is fear. So the news isn't just reporting what's happening. It's amplifying the most alarming version of what's happening. Because alarming keeps you watching. Watching keeps the advertisers paying. And the cycle repeats, getting louder and more extreme with every iteration. I've been very deliberate throughout my life about where I direct my attention during economic downturns. Because attention isn't neutral. Where you put it shapes how you think. And how you think shapes what you do. When markets fall, the headlines get louder.
The predictions get more extreme. The urgency becomes overwhelming. And people react emotionally, which is exactly what they're designed to do. They sell when they should hold. They panic when they should think. They make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. I've watched this happen in every recession I've lived through. And in every single one, the people who reacted to the noise paid for it. Not just financially. They paid with years of lost progress. Years they could never get back. Here's what I do when the noise gets loud. I turn it off.
I go back to the fundamentals. I ask myself, what does this business actually produce? What will it be worth in 10 years? Is this a real, lasting problem? Or is this fear presenting itself as a problem? Most of the time, after careful thought, it's the second one. The market is not a weighing machine in the short term. It's a voting machine. And during recessions, it votes based on fear, not value. But fear passes. Value remains. The tax I'm describing isn't money taken from your bank account. It's something more expensive. It's clarity taken from your thinking, patience taken from your decision-making, confidence taken from your judgment. And in a recession, clear thinking is the single most valuable asset you can possess. More valuable than cash, more valuable than the best stock tip, more valuable than any prediction or forecast. Because every great financial decision I have ever made, every one, came from a place of stillness. Not from reacting to what everyone else was doing. From quietly asking, what do I actually know to be true here? That is the discipline I want you to build before the 2026 recession fully arrives. Not just the financial systems, not just the debt reduction. The ability to stay quiet when the world is loud. To think slowly when everyone else is moving fast. To act, but only after you've actually thought it through. That is what separates the people who harvest in recessions from the people who simply try to survive them. Everything I've shared comes down to 4 steps. Not theories, not inspiration. 4 concrete things you can do in the right order starting today. Step 1, awareness. See where you actually stand. The first step is the most uncomfortable, and it's the one most people skip. They have a general sense of their finances, a rough idea. They don't want to look too closely because looking closely forces a confrontation with reality, and reality sometimes hurts. But I have never, not once in 60 years of investing, seen a financial problem improve because someone looked away from it. This week, sit down and build the complete picture. Every monthly expense, every debt, the balance, the interest rate, the monthly cost, every subscription, every automatic charge, every financial obligation that comes out whether you think about it or not. Then ask yourself one question. If my income stopped tomorrow, completely, immediately, with no warning, how many months could I last? If that number is less than 6 months, that is your only priority right now. Not investing, not finding the next opportunity, not optimizing your portfolio, not watching more financial content. Building a 6-month cash cushion is the single most powerful financial move you can make before a recession, because you cannot think clearly when you're desperate. You cannot be patient when you're in survival mode. You cannot take advantage of opportunity when you're just trying to stay afloat. The emergency fund doesn't just protect you financially, it protects your thinking. It buys you the one resource that matters most in a downturn. Time. Time to evaluate. Time to wait. Time to act when the moment is actually right, rather than being forced to react because you have no other choice. Step 2, control. Align your systems with your goals. Once you can see clearly, you build. Go back to what we talked about with environment architecture. Automate your savings. Set it up so money moves before you ever touch it. Automate your investment contributions if you have them. Remove friction from the behaviors you want to do more of. Add friction to the ones you want to do less of. Then go back to the consumption identity.
Ask yourself honestly, not to judge, but to see. Where your spending is tied to your sense of self. Where are you buying identity instead of value? Where are you maintaining a version of yourself that's costing more than it's worth? Once you see it clearly, you have a choice. Before you see it, you don't. Then attack your highest interest debt, not the largest balance, the highest interest rate. That's where the debt accelerator is running fastest. That's where compound interest is working hardest against you. Cut the power to it first. Control means your systems are working for you even when you're tired, even when you're stressed, even when the news is loud and the world feels uncertain. That's the only kind of control worth having.
Step 3, growth. Position yourself before the opportunity arrives. This is the part I enjoy most. When asset prices fall, and in a 2026 recession, they will, most people experience that as loss, as tragedy, as something to escape from or panic about. I experience it as a sale. The underlying business doesn't become worth less because the stock price goes down. The property isn't worth less because the market is panicking and someone needs to sell quickly. Price and value are different things. That is the most important financial distinction I know. And a recession is the single best time in an entire decade to buy good assets at prices that reflect someone else's fear, rather than the actual intrinsic value of what you're buying. But, and this is critical, you can only do that if you prepared. Emergency fund in place, high interest debt reduced, cash available. If those aren't in place, you'll be one of the people selling, and I'll be one of the people buying. That's how wealth transfers in recessions. It's not random. It's not luck. It's not connections or insider information. It's a direct, predictable result of who prepared and who didn't, who thought ahead and who reacted, who built patience and who built lifestyle. The wealth gap that forms during recessions is always created in the months before, in quiet decisions made by ordinary people who chose to see clearly when it was still comfortable and act deliberately when it was still calm. Step 4. Freedom. Remember what this is actually for. The last step is the one most financial advice forgets entirely. Money is not the goal. I want to be very direct about this because I think it gets lost in the noise of portfolios and interest rates and market predictions. I've known people with enormous wealth who weren't free. Not free in any meaningful sense of the word. They were serving their money, worried about it, imprisoned by it, defined by it, rather than the other way around. And I've known people with very modest means who were completely, genuinely free because their money served their life. Their systems ran quietly in the background. Their obligations were light. Their thinking was clear. Their time was their own. The difference was never the number in the account. The best investment I ever made wasn't in a company. It wasn't in real estate. It wasn't in the stock market. It was in my own thinking, in reading, in studying, in understanding how businesses actually work and how human behavior actually drives outcomes. That investment compounded for decades. And unlike any stock or bond or piece of property, it never went down in value. What I want for you, and the reason I'm sharing all of this, isn't a bigger portfolio. It's a life where you wake up and your systems are working, where your decisions come from clarity, not desperation, where a recession feels like an opportunity rather than a threat, where you're positioned to act when others are paralyzed by fear.
Closing. The truth about what's coming. Let me bring everything together. We talked about the liquidity trap, the danger of confusing a growing lifestyle with growing wealth, and why cash gives you options when others have none. We talked about the debt accelerator, how compound interest works just as powerfully against you as it does for you, and why entering a recession with low obligations changes everything about how you experience it.
We talked about the consumption identity, how spending becomes wrapped up in self-worth, and why the most financially resilient people I know identify with their values rather than their possessions. We talked about environment architecture, why willpower alone will never be enough, and how the right systems and the right people around you will do more for your financial life than any amount of discipline or motivation. And we talked about the attention economy tax, how fear-based media extracts clarity from your thinking, and why the quietest investors in the room are almost always the most successful ones. 4 steps: awareness, control, growth, freedom. Here's what I want to leave you with. I'm not nervous about what's coming in 2026, and I don't want you to be either. Nervous is for the people who didn't prepare. Readiness is for the people who took the time, before it was urgent, before it was obvious, before it was on every news channel, to build something solid. The people who come out ahead in the 2026 recession won't be the ones with the biggest income or the hottest investment. They'll be the ones who stayed calm, who thought clearly, who prepared before the storm and acted without panic when the moment arrived. That can be you. The principles are simple. The framework is practical. The opportunity is real. But the work, the decision to start, the decision to look honestly at where you stand, the decision to build rather than spend, that work is yours. Start today, not tomorrow, not when things get worse and the urgency finally feels unavoidable. Today, while it's still calm, while you still have time. Because the wealth gap forming right now isn't waiting for you to be ready.